What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our Monday morning live stream. It's going to be a fixture this year, our PGA Slate review streams, where we go through last week, try and learn a little bit from our action to try and sharpen our axe, our process, and hopefully just get better and better as we get more experience. That's going to be the case with pretty much anything that you're doing, but especially when you're playing PGA DFS, a sport where we're getting a lot of stats, a lot of feedback week to week that we can use to our advantage. We can look at players, look at where ownerships went right, things where maybe ownerships were a little bit further off. And, with our process, choosing players, so on and so forth, a lot of people don't look at last week, right? As soon as they're, out of it there on a Friday, they'll take their results, throw them in the back pocket, completely try and forget about them, which it's great from a coping mechanism standpoint, but if you actually want to get better at playing DFS, learning your process, creating lineups, so on and so forth, you've got to be, honest with yourself. You got to be willing to take that self-criticism. So that's the idea here. Not every week is going to be smash, and just a forecast right here. I did not smash from the DFS side. On Showdown over there on Prize Picks, we did. So we ended up making up for it, ended up being a profitable week. But you'll see over here on the DFS side, when you didn't play ROM this week, probably didn't go all that well. What's going on, Nick? I can see actually right behind me. I just brought up the stream. My cat is a co-star today, I guess, back there in the background. You can see she's kind of staring up the stream. She's watching me. She's judging me like everyone else out there for my results this week. But love to see you down there, Nick. Let's get this thing rocking. So I'll share my screen. We're going to start with a look at the large field GPP. First off, how I ended up doing, we'll look at the GPP winning lineup, and then we're going to go through the community contest. So like the key fixture of this stream going forward this series is going to be our community contest. I'm going to plug that on every single live stream on Wednesday, just like I did over the last few weeks. And on there, if you get into that contest, you're going to have an ability to have your lineup looked at here. So if you want me to give you some feedback on your single entry, the type of leverage that you're getting to, maybe your total ownership, salary left on the table, whatever you want feedback on, that's the perfect way to get it. So you don't have to be on the Discord. You don't have to be in my Patreon to get access to that. The link to that contest will always be on my videos whenever the contest ends up dropping. And then, of course, I'm going to plug it heavily there on the live stream on Wednesday. But let's start with a look at the GPP, like I mentioned, where I got absolutely destroyed. So this is a 150 max $5 entry. So it's a $750 entry. And I made 226 back. I got pennies back on my dollar, which honestly, when you're going to get your butt handed to you in DFS, I'd be okay if that was zero, right? I'm going for a top end result. I'm not going to worry about the slates where I'm only making $226 back because that's just going to be a byproduct of the aggressive sort of approach that I take. My only issue this week was really just not playing John Rahm. I had Xander Schauffele in my pool, which was a hyper aggressive play, which ended up working out. Tom Kim up top. Davis Thompson was a huge piece of my poll. I mean, we even talked about him on the Wednesday live stream. JT Poston was a key fixture in my poll. Just I had some solid plays. I mean, you can see I had lineups with like Cam Young. They were even towards the top of my portfolio. Just a lot of 5 of 6s. My combinations didn't really end up getting the job done. And anytime I had like a Davis Thompson in a lineup, maybe a Tom Kim in that same sort of build, it was always, a Ben Martin that was sinking the lineup. Or in this case, it was a Harris English, right, who ended up missing the cut by one shot, that sort of thing. So I wasn't able to put all the key pieces together. In terms of your GPP winner, which is what we want to focus on here, is actually one of the touts out there. So I believe his name is Klaus Boss. I know that, right? He works for BetSperts out there. He's a PGA Splits, I think, over there on Twitter. Ended up taking this down with a ROM lineup. And outside of ROM, I guess Montgomery rate 15%. I wouldn't call him like a pivot play, that sort of thing. But Hadman, relatively low owned. Dietrich wasn't as chalky as I think some people expected him to be, including myself. And then like an 8-9% Chris Kirk and a 2-3% owned Davis Thompson. Just a beautiful lineup, right? Scored 810 points. And the thing is, he won by 11 points here with something far from the optimal. I mean, Adam Hadman, Thomas Dietrich were far from being the optimal lineup out there. So, yeah, that's what I got to say out there. And he's saying that shirt looks like an optical illusion. Wow. Oh, my goodness. It does. I'm looking at it on my screen right now. It's like warping the screen. Dude, I got to note that for next time. I can't wear this when I'm doing content. I got to take this off for the videos I'm doing today. That's messed up. I see what you're talking about over there, boss. It's got to be something with like the frame rate or something. the spacing between it. I mean, even in real life, it looks kind of trippy. I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, on the camera over there, I see what you're talking about, dude. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Nick says, "Who's more chill, the cat or Luke?" Definitely the cat. I mean, look back there. She's just laying. I had to move stuff around because they're doing the Surf Pro stuff. They're still cleaning up the leak that I had here. And yeah, the cat's on top of some boxes I had to take out of the closet, and she's chilling. She's over there just hanging out. Nick says, you got top 10 in the Gsluke Pro contest. Hey, you beat me by one, I think. I think I finished in 11th. It was not the best showing overall. Robert says, you got dead fucking last. Let's just take a look at it. Oh, obviously, we're going to get back to the GPP look here in a second. Let's see. Oh, boy. Yeah, Rob finished in last. Oh, Martin finished in second to last. Oh, boy. Rage finished third to last out there. Boy, our mods were not on point this week. No, Nick, you finished in ninth. You did a lot better than the rest of us. I finished in 11th place. So, yeah, I got to get my shit together on that end, Nick. We did not have a strong showing this week, and yeah, a lot of us didn't have the best showing there. He said, "Yes, take it off." No. Yeah, we're not gonna take off the shirt and stream. It'd be getting a little too wild. No drinks flowing here at 10:37 a.m. other than a little bit of coffee, or else. I mean, if we were like 10 shots in, all bets are off. I'd do some wild stuff. All right, let's get into this though. So, in terms of the top end lineups, they're all going to have John Rahm. Like, he was 28% owned. If you didn't play him this week, you got absolutely destroyed. And that's essentially what happened with me. You could have a Davis Thompson in your lineups. You could have the JT Poston that made 29 birdies this week. You could help leverage that 6K range. I mean, they even had some guys make the cut, like a Tyson Alexander. Actually, I think Alexander missed the cut, but there were plenty of 6K guys in my pool that ended up making the cut at like zero price tag. Just plenty of them in the field. It's a volatile event. I mean, anytime you have a birdie fest, you're going to see some of those lower class players making the cut. And it didn't end up mattering because the optimal lineup was Rahm and then skipping the whole entire 9K range. You can see almost every lineup up here. I guess one had Xander, right? Xander was obviously an optimal play. Just a lot of people didn't get there because of the injury concerns. So you didn't really have to have them in these large field GPPs. You can see the winning lineup there, Klaus Boss, did not have Xander Schauffele in it. But a lot of these lineups up here, the ones that don't have Xander, you can see it's pretty much skipping the entire 9K range, right? He's hardly in the 9K there with a Cam Young. Next one's a Taylor Montgomery lineup, another Xander, right? Like I said, if they have Xander, right, they're going to be there. But look at this. That whole 9K range, we had Zalatoris, you had Xander in that range, you had guys like a Tom Kim in that range that a lot of people were trying to jam in. A lot of these lineups are skipping that range. So that's just something that I noticed when I was going through the top of the leaderboard, is that from the lineup construction standpoint, that's not something I do very often, where I'm taking an elite level talent and then just skipping all of that win equity. I mean, a lot of people out there will even ask me questions about it, or I'll see it on other live streams, other pieces of content where people go, "Oh, well, you really want that win equity, right?" There's a lot of opportunity cost is usually what people say when skipping that range. Well, the byproduct of that is that they didn't have to take these 6K range golfers, right? And then you had a Chris Kirk in the middle of the 7K range that smashed. Guys like an Alex Smalley, who made 22 birdies on the week, that sort of thing, had 2 bogey-free rounds. I mean, that's how he got to 107 fantasy points. It paid off, right? That balanced approach, right? You can see there was even just a Xander lineup up there in the top 15. It didn't even have a John Rahm in it. That, again, had one 10K golfer and then skipped that whole 9K range. So I don't think we have to overreact. It's not like you have to build all your lineups this way going forward. But when people start pointing out that misnomer that you have to jam in those 2 guys up top, I'm going to start giving a lot more pushback, because look at this. The first time we see a 6K golfer here, other than Davis Thompson, it's a Harry Hall, right? $6,600, Harry Hall. And that's what, over there in 20th place? Right? You got to go the whole way down to 20th to try to find that sort of position. That's telling to me. So again, don't overreact. We don't want to be changing our lineup construction for every single week. But if you're hearing from somebody out there that you have to jam in somebody there in that 9K range, I'm not sure if I buy it. Let's go over to the community contest. Let's look at my main single entry. So this is what I went with in all of my contests. And from the lineup construction standpoint, there's a reason why I went with it. I mentioned on stream that I was thinking about just skipping the 10K range, right? And I was telling you guys, I was like, I'm super tempted to do it. Nobody's going to go in that direction. And that's what I went with. I went with the hyper aggressive, super cheap approach. My most expensive player was a Tom Kim. My least expensive player was a Taylor Moore. Unfortunately, did not hit on Taylor Moore. He missed the cut by 2, so he had a pretty solid week. Only made 7 birdies, though, which is just ridiculous at this sort of a birdie fest, right? In 3 rounds, he only made 7 birdies, but only made 3 bogeys on the week. Unfortunately, he made 1 bogey every single round. So he didn't get you that bogey-free round any day. So that was the real stinker there for me. But Munoz, I loved his upside as an aggressive player. He finished in 41st. I mean, that was okay. He made 26 birdies, well outplaced his finishing position, which was kind of the idea with the Munoz. We know that he's an aggressive player that can go out there and make 25, 30 birdies in a week. So even when he's not in contention, he can kind of just get you by. And that's what he did there, right? 98 points, far from hurt me. Davis Riley, on the other hand, only made 19 birdies. I mean, that was just not the greatest play. A lot of people played him in this contest because I touted him this week. So 20.8% ownership was significantly higher than what you saw in other contests. So not the best place to hit the Gala. He started off hot, just kind of cooled down throughout the weekend. Burnsy, Tom Kim ended up both playing well. So it was good in theory. I feel pretty solid about this lineup. And though, Burns, Kim, Thigala, they all had at least 10, 15% ownership. Burns closer to 10% in terms of that ownership mark. This lineup wasn't super chalky or wasn't duplicated because nobody was starting with this balanced of a build. And nobody was taking a Taylor Moore down there. He was completely forgot about this week. Munoz, right, wasn't very highly owned. So this was just going for pure leverage. When I entered this into a lot of the, $100 single entries, the $200 single entries, so on and so forth, I was trying to win first place. I was trying to go after it from a different perspective. I didn't even take a Scotty Scheffler, who was one of the most exposed plays in my player pool for the 150 max. Didn't play a Xander Schauffele in the lineup, which again was one of my top exposed plays, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's all I got to say about it. I went for first. We didn't end up getting it though. But yeah, we'll take a look at a couple of your lineups down in chat here now. Let's see what's going on. Nick says, get in touch with your inner Harry Higgs. Dude, I hope he plays there at Waste Management again. I have to think that he might get a sponsorship exemption into the event just because of what he did last year. I can't wait to see it. Mark says, I know Monty messed up on the 17th, but I thought he had a really bad break on the 14th by hitting the pin. He would have been a shoo-in to get to minus 26. Yeah, the ball striking on Sunday was impressive. Now, I faded him on Sunday. Now, I didn't fade his strokes or anything. I know that he's more incapable of going low, but I faded his GIR number. So I tried to go out there. He was at 14 greens on Prize Picks, which is significantly higher than where he should be. And then he hit 16 of 18 greens. And that was under Sunday pressure, Sunday pin locations where they're going to make it even more difficult. So yeah, I'm even more impressed by Taylor Montgomery. And before that point, he was at a 60% clip when it came to hitting greens of regulation, and then goes out there on Sunday and hits 88%. Just he's a killer. I guess he's somebody that gets a little bit stronger under pressure. There's a few guys like that, and I have to say, Mark, yeah, like you said, he got a little bit unlucky there. The shot on 17 too. I know he messed up, but that's sometimes just variance, right? I don't think that was a mental mistake for him as much as it just was a physical one. Could even have been a little bit of an unlucky break that we didn't know about. So yeah, I'm really, really high on his prospects. I mean, I have been to this point, but even more so after he burned me over there on that side. Let's take a look at Nick's lineup. I know he wants us to take a little look at it. So he played Cantlay. Okay. I thought the play was all right. What was his ownership? Let's check on the final number. We're going to bring up my projections here in a second. So after we go through a few of your lineups down in chat, we're going to bring up my ownership. And that's kind of what we're going to focus on. We'll look at the player pool. We'll look at some of the spots that I was getting leverage to. But mostly I want to look at the ownership side where Cantlay was 23.8% owned. And that was in the $5 GPP. Yeah, I don't hate it. That's not too bad on him. Obviously, if you knew that Rahm was only going to be 4% higher owned, I would have made the pivot, right? If I was on a Cantlay and I knew that, you may have also made that pivot if you knew that he was only going to be 4% higher. But I can't blame you for making that play whatsoever. It looked like it was a little bit of a punting contest this week, more so than it has been over the last few years. And yeah, Cantlay, arguably the best putter in the world. Love the Tom Kim play. Love the Sahith play. So, because you went with the slightly chalky play up top, I like that you went with a relatively low-owned Kim and Thigala. Thomas Dietrich was a great play. Smalley, another great play, who in our contest was just a little bit higher owned than most contests. So he wasn't nearly as chalky as the 20.8% would imply. And then you had Lingmerth was your only stinker there. And I think he was a really good value play. Had made the cut here like every time he had played at the American Express. I believe was runner-up finish twice around these tracks at La Quinta. So yeah, I love the lineup, Nick. You got the leverage you needed to. You took the plays in the 7K range that ended up not being as chalky as I thought they were going to be. I thought Dietrich was going to be like 15% owned because he was just such an obvious play. And in hindsight, if I knew he was going to be the 9% that he came in at, I mean, he was a smash play because he should have been like 15, 16% owned. And I guess a lot of people fell into the same trap that I did, assumed that he would be chalky like he was for a lot of that fall swing. And that just wasn't the case. So good play with their on Dietrich. I'll say that. Let's look at your lineup there, Rob. I know you probably don't want me to look at this. All right. So, yeah, I played everyone in this lineup too. So I can't fault you here at all, Rob, to be frank with you. But let's look at it. So you took a Cam Young, which, that play ended up being pretty horrendous in hindsight. But I was there too. It could have easily gone the other way. His putter was ice cold the entire week. In terms of your leverage, you had Alexander, who was about 2% owned. So that gives you a massive spot of leverage right there when it comes to your product ownership. Ben Griffin, like 8, 9%. Okay. Same thing with like a KH Lee. I'm cool with that as well. Yeah, I like this lineup. This is perfect for like those single entries, especially like a higher dollar single entry is the kind of, contest I'd be thinking with this. Now, if I was going with like a smaller dollar, but higher field size single entry, I might be a little bit more aggressive about it. I might try and take maybe instead of like a KH Lee, more of a pivot play in that range. And let's see who we could have taken. So we had KH Lee there, who was like 10% owned. Actually, no. I mean, he was the pivot in that range. And I'm looking at ownership. I mean, he could go to a Wyndham Clark, but he didn't play very much better. No, I'm very good with this lineup. It makes sense. You had the 3 missed cuts, which obviously kind of stinks, but that's just going to happen. Cam Davis, he played horrendously this week. You had KH Lee missed the cut by 1, and then good old Tyson Alexander. He looked great there to start the week. I don't know if you guys saw on Monday. He was like 6 under par through his like first 12 holes, and then completely threw away all of his progress. I believe had 2 water balls, ended up only finishing a couple under par for his first day, and that's all she wrote. After that, the momentum was not going the right direction. Let's see what else we've got. We got Monty, $9,200 in this field. The ball striking is starting to get me around. And actually, we're going to take a look. You can see I have the tournament fact sheets up for Torrey Pines, what we're going to see for the Farmers. We'll talk about it a little bit because if you guys are hanging around here, I know you guys are golf hardos. We'll talk about the setup because it's going to be a little bit different this year. Men says, can you review your lineup? Absolutely. So where are you at? Let's find you, Ben. You're second place. Okay, so we actually have a good lineup here, Ben. Unlike my lineup, Nick's, Rob's lineup. So our lineups are dog shit. So your lineup scored 661, which I'm not sure in terms of cash rate, whether that cashed in single entries or not. I have to imagine it was pretty close because you had John Rahm in there, a JT Poston. Actually, so I thought Keith Mitchell's screenshot looks a little bit like Poston. Not Poston. You had Tom Kim in there. So you had relatively chalky John Rahm, but you counterbalanced that with a Tom Kim, who was below average in terms of his ownership in that range. Keith Mitchell, who was very much so a pivot play. So I like what you did up top, right? You went with that one chalky pick, but you made sure to differentiate. You took a Smalley and Griffin, who I loved both of them, and then a Callum Turan. Yeah, this is what I'm looking for in a single entry. And even in the GPP, this lineup would have worked. You can see Ben Griffin was 45% owned. Again, that's only because it was this contest. And 4-round contest in like a 150 max sort of scenario, he was only 9.6% owned. So sure, a little bit chalky there for that 7K range. But you had the pivots there, like a Keith Mitchell in your lineup. Callum Turan, what was his ownership? I know it was relatively low there. So let me double check on that. I must have passed Turan. What was he, like 7,200? Yeah, $7,200. He was only 4.8% owned. So yeah, you had 2 sub 5% owned players. Nobody outside of a John Rahm that was really over 15%. I know Tom Kim, right, says 33% right there. In your 4-round contest, Tom Kim was only 12.7% owned. Love the lineup. You got enough leverage. You took your one piece of chalk that ended up hitting, which obviously in hindsight, I wish I ended up doing too. We had him at the century, right? I fell into that trap where you're like, oh, you can't do it again. He's not going to go out there and win twice in a row. Well, it's Jon Rahm. And I should have listened to my own advice, by the way. I literally said on DGen's podcast, it's like, oh, what player do you think is going to start 2023 like on a hot streak, right? Go out there and maybe be the best player of the year. I said Jon Rahm. I was like, based on how he played last year and based on the schedule to start the year, I see him winning a few times in the first month. Well, he did that. Just unfortunately, I was only there for half of the win. So I'll have to listen to my own advice going forward. Nick says, what do you have to do for DK to give you a picture? Right? Like Montgomery, Smalley, Ben Griffin, these guys are like actual studs at this point. Like we know they're going to be fixtures on tour this year. No pictures. Like, and who else doesn't have a picture? Like Will Zalatoris, Cam Young, guys that have like shown up at major championships, gotten into contention. No pictures. Yeah, I don't know what's going on because you even have guys that have pictures on there that like shouldn't have pictures. Like let's find one here. Like Dietrich has one. Lingmerth has a picture, right? Lingmerth, their $6,700 golfer. Let's see. Like Pendrith doesn't have one. Like Lipsky has one. Ben Ann has one. Yet Willie Z and Cam Young don't. Like it's just they're interns. They got to get more interns. Maybe they're out of the budget for going out there and hiring people. It's got to find some college interns to go in there and just upload these pictures. It's a little crazy. That I can see the shirt out of the side of my eye right now. That's got to be distracting as hell. That's ridiculous. Ben says you play single entry and 3 max, lower entry price. Yeah, I like that sort of lineup then. You had more than enough leverage for a single entry. In fact, I think you probably had enough leverage in that lineup for a large field GPP. If you want to play a piece of chalk like Jon Rahm, you handled that perfectly. So no complaints on my end there, Ben. Ant says, what's up, man? What's going on? Hopefully you're doing well this Monday morning. And Nick says, fading Rahm this week. Oh, I don't know about that. We'll have to see, Nick. Like I said, I think I need to start taking my own advice. Like when I say things like, oh, Jon Rahm's going to just like win over and over again to start the year. I should probably play on that, right? Use that to my advantage, that sort of thing. My cat's sitting on my mic right now. I have a feeling she's going to unplug it. So if I go mute here in the next like minute, I'll get it fixed. I'll be able to see it on my screen here. Come on, move, cat. Go. She's growling at me now. Sorry, I had to move the cat. Hopefully my mic didn't unplug because of that. You silly cat, what you doing? Go back on your tower. Hopefully she goes back on her tower. That's what she needs to do. All right, let's go through some of the things for Torrey before we go into the projection sheet. The projection sheet, we're mostly going to go through ownership on there, go through a few of the trends that we noticed, which is probably the most important part of the stream. But let's look at the tournament here for Torrey Pines. Take a little bit of a break from looking at last slate. So if you didn't know, it's another Pro-Am. It's another 2-course setup. They have the South and the North course. The event where you see the U.S. Open at, where you see 3 out of the 4 rounds this week, is going to be the South course. So this is the main course. It's the one that's 7,700 yards, one of the longer courses that you have on tour. And really, the only thing I want to focus on here is this little quote right here. I sent it down in my Discord this morning, but it's going to make a massive, massive impact on this week. So I'm just going to read it. Following the holiday season, frequent rain events hit the property, said Devin Cullen, director of agronomy, on January 9th. So this was 2 weeks ago. Okay, so keep that in mind. This was a whole 2 weeks ago. We have seen years with precipitation totals much higher than what we are seeing, but it is the frequency and the consistency that these storms have hit that has given the property little time to dry down. So essentially over the last 2-3 weeks, and it's continued since January 9th, that same trend has continued. They're getting rain like every 3 days. You've probably seen it on the news. There's all of those like Arctic winds that are going through the northwest mostly, but also just the West Coast in general, like over there in San Diego. So they just keep getting drenched every few days. This course is extremely lush. It's playing a lot longer because it's also extremely damp. And he goes on to say that. You can see with a few rain events still projected between now and the tournament, which, like I said, you've seen since January 9th in the area, I'm expecting the course to play longer and thicker than it already does. And now, this is the huge quote there. Longer and thicker than it already does. Torrey Pines is already one of the longest and thickest courses on tour. It's nearly fucking 100 yards. Like that, do you know how that's ridiculous? That's like Kiwa Island long when it comes to your distance. It already has some of the lushest rough out there. It has that Kikuya rough that just it takes your club and just buries it into the ground. And now they're telling you it's going to play even softer and it's going to play even more lush, that rough. That means it's ball strikers galore. That means that guys that are short off the tee, that can't keep it in play, they don't have strength to hack it out of that rough, literally have no shot. Like this week, I'm telling you, when I'm going to my bets and I'm going to my player pool, there won't be one player outside of the top like 30 or 40 in distance in my player pool, which means I'm going to have a condensed player pool. I'm going to have a real good idea of what I'm looking for this week. And that's probably going to be the biggest advantage that I'm going for. So I just wanted to point that out as a little aside before we go into the ownership projections there. But yeah, they said it directly on the GCSAA sheet there. So directly from the head of agronomy, the course is going to play a lot gnarlier this year than what you've seen in the past. In terms of your winning score, I mean, that's probably going to shoot it well upwards, right? Instead of seeing, decent scoring around the South course, it might be absolute carnage out there. And if we get a little bit of wind, I mean, just watch out. I mean, it could be like US Open conditions out there, and that would be a lot of fun. Let's see what we've got going on. It says, doing well, set your Twitter, so decided to stop by. Appreciate you. Yeah, we're just going through some DFS stuff on here, looking at our fantasy results from last week and trying to see if we can learn anything from it, anything that needs to be gleaned. Bobcat, love the name, by the way, says, your cat Molly is always on your calls. Back to your tower. Yep. I told you. I was saying I knew she was going to go over there at some point. That's just like her thing. You make a tower for a cat, like a cat tree. They're going to go in it. You give a cat a box. They're going to get in the box. That's for damn sure. So she's on her spot over there. And my other cat's in here too. So I have two cats. I have that black cat. Her name's Pretzel. She's the smartest cat I've ever seen. She knows how to open doors, which is a whole problem on itself because I have to lock all the doors to make sure she can't get out, that sort of thing. And then I have this little fat cat named Nugget, which you may have seen on stream before. I've brought her on here before. She's a chonk and a half. She's trying to lose weight. She's doing her best with it, but she's adorable to say the very least. Jack says, just noticed that Braceface isn't in the Farmers or Dubai. Wonder if he's injured. Might be, or might just be taking some time off, working on a swing. Who knows? It's that time of year where guys sometimes just take time off. Victor Hovland, same kind of thing. He's also not in the field this week for the Farmers. So I think that's a little bit strange. What's going on, Why I Win? You said, have positive ROI for the Amex. Love it. Yeah, I did overall. For DFS, I didn't. So for 4-round stuff, I got absolutely handed to me. I went over that a little bit ago, but I got like a third of my money back, which it's like you're pretty much losing all your money when it comes to your large field GPP. But Showdown I won, and I won on Prize Pick. So it worked out. We did okay this week. We won money, but I like when I'm winning money in my GPPs too. It's the hardest leg to hit, right? You've got the house edge to beat, and then you've got 20,000 other people to beat in those GPPs. So if there's one leg that we're going to struggle on, it's probably going to be DFS. You guys probably know that, right? It's the most volatile form of golf gambling that you have, but it's also the highest ROI when you hit big, right? That's why we play good old DFS over there in Draftkings. Let's go through this ownership. So there's a lot of numbers on here, right? I just want to, we'll give you the important categories here. What we're really going to focus on here are these 3 categories, okay? This is where we're going to learn a lot. It's our projected ownership, which is what I was projecting in terms of ownership this week. The actual ownership, this is the ownership in the large $5 GPP. So the 150 max that I entered, these are the actual ownership numbers that guys came in. And then probably the most important category here is going to be the ownership difference percentage. All that is my projected ownership minus the actual ownership. The metric you get there, we want it to be as close to 0. And that's going to show us how accurate our projections are. You take a look at them. We were pretty much, well, not even pretty much. We were within 5% on every single player in the field. So when you're taking a look at ownership numbers, if you have everyone within 5%, 100%, that would be like a spotless clean sweep. Typically, if you can get everything within 10%, that's kind of like the bar to standard. You don't want to be missing any ownership projections by more than 10%. If you can miss every single projection by less than 5%, that's when you did a really good job with ownership. At least that's the standard that I hold myself to. So we ended up doing pretty well there. Let's see. Actually, 5.2% on a Denny McCarthy. So I guess I do have to attest. I didn't get under my 5% roll on him at the very least, but it was 5.2. we made it pretty close there. Outside of that, you can see like the most people are off on players down here was about like 2.5%, 3%, which if you're playing your leverage game correctly, like you can see Grayson Sig, I was off by 2.8%. I usually play about 2.5x on these projections. You can get away with that, right? Because, at a 6-7% owned Grayson Sig, I played 18%, which if I played 18% and he was 9% owned, I still got 2x leverage to the field. So that's why I use 5% as kind of like the metric that I'm going for, because as long as you're within that sort of boundary, you're going to be getting close to the kind of leverage that you're looking for. You get outside that boundary is when you start to have issues, because every time you're off by 10% on somebody, that's going to impact other players, right? Because that 10% you gave to somebody else should have been allocated to the guys around him. So it snowballs, right? So the more accurate your projections are, the more accurate the projections are for the guys around them. So we did a pretty good job with ownership, I have to say that. But something to note up top, the top was a lot higher owned than even I expected. So I account for salary when doing a lot of my analysis here. And last week, people were a little bit more studs and duds than at least my algorithm was accounting for. So you can see we were about 4 or 5% off on both of those top end options, which we'll have to account for. We'll have to keep in mind going forward. Usually at major championships, my algo does a little bit of a better job at accounting for that. But because of the field strength here at the Amex, which we're not used to seeing year after year, I suppose that effect was just a little bit exacerbated. People wanted to jam in those guys that they felt had all the win equity in the field. And if you guys remember, that played to the field's detriment. When we were looking at those large field GPP optimals, most of them had one guy in the 10K range, right? So they took one of these guys up top and then ended up jamming in somebody down here in the 9K. It was usually a Taylor Montgomery, right, as your second man in. So because people were so heavy up top, like I said, it played to their detriment. So I wanted to point that out. I have the fat cat here, so I'm bringing her on stream. She doesn't always come up here. This is the chonky nugget cat that I was talking about. She usually doesn't come up on the desk. She's a little big, so she has to really attempt to jump up onto the table when she's getting up here. So I figured I'd let her say hi because she doesn't come by that often. Nick says her brace face is buying a new Prius. Oh my God. Wouldn't surprise me. He's got a new set of Skechers going too. He's got a new set of rec specs going. God, I gotta stop making fun of him. Nick Moore says, great golf week for you if you include the DP World Tour. Yeah, what is it? 2 Rolex Series events in a row. I know they had the Abu Dhabi event last week, which Gsluke is one of the better events to watch, like from a venue perspective. Just so much undulation, so many shots he had to hit. I mean, that shot Victor Perez hit to win the golf tournament there on 17 was ridiculous. So and you get another great venue, another really strong field for the Rolex Series event. So Nick, especially you as a Euro Tour guy, you gotta be feeling pretty good this week because Torrey's gonna be a lot of fun too. So let's hop back into these ownership numbers. Like I said, up top, it played to the detriment of people really going so heavy there. But outside of that, you can see Sanjay M came in actually a little bit lower owned than I expected, which surprised the heck out of me. That is just people getting mad at him. Like last week, he missed the cut, right? We played him last week, right? We were a part of that majority there. But people really let that affect their results, their decision process. They hold grudges against players. So you saw Sanjay's ownership come in lower than we expected. And then Tom Kim, the same thing. He came in only about 1.7% lower owned. But that's all that is. Like that's literally people holding a grudge against a player right there, which my algorithm can't account for, right? We're not accounting for psychological effects when it comes to my ownership projections. One day I'll get there. One day we'll have it to that point, so detailed to the point where we're starting to incorporate that kind of analysis. But I think that's what you're seeing there from the ownership perspective. So maybe worth noting. Cam Young came in pretty much exactly at our ownership mark. And, anytime you have a mega chalky player, it's usually pretty easy to get their ownership right. Tom Hoagie down here came in a little bit lower owned than where we projected him at. I think that's a lot of people trying to pivot off of the chalk. Anytime we're putting out these ownership projections, there's going to be an equal and opposite reaction to every action, right? Newton's second law of physics right there. It has the same sort of thing, right? You put out a high ownership number in somebody, a lot of times it's going to lower that ownership. So you saw that on a Tom Hoagie. You saw that over here in a Cam Davis. Rather than coming in like 16% owned, people saw that as chalk that they didn't want to eat. And it looks like they came a little bit under the field on them. So those are a few things I wanted to note, obviously try and incorporate in the projections going forward. Aaron Wise, he was also about 4% lower owned than I was projecting him for. I'm not so sure on that one. That's a little bit of a head scratcher for me. I thought given the form, the fact that he had been striping it so well, the putter had gone a little bit better, that he would at least be double digit owned. I didn't think that he'd be like the one guy in this range that's going to be single digit owned, but he was. So yeah, like I said, kind of a head scratcher when it comes to the Aaron Wise ownership, but nonetheless, we'll try to figure it out going forward there. Hunter says, I've withdrawn roughly 3,000 from Prize Picks and Underdog since joining your Patreon and Discord. If you're not members, run, don't walk to sign up. Thanks for all the knowledge. I promise you guys, I did not pay Hunter to give that little ad read there, but I appreciate you nonetheless, Hunter. Yeah, dude, we've been killing it over there on Underdog. I mean, Underdog, the thing I love about Underdog is there's no multipliers. So like when there's an edge to be had, when they upload projections on Underdog that are just incorrect, that have, let's say, like a 1 birdie difference or something like that across the board, you can exploit it, right? You can just take all overs and get like still a 20x card. That's what I love about Underdog. What I don't love about Underdog is you can't cancel entries. There's lower maxes, so you can only enter like $250 per player for the sport. So we'll have to see. So he said he did not. Yeah, exactly. I didn't pay you to say it, right? But hey, I appreciate it nonetheless, Hunter. And yeah, $3,000, and I don't think you've been around for that long, Hunter. I think it's probably been like a couple months at this point. A couple grand over a couple months doesn't hurt, right? That's for damn sure. Let's go through these GPP plays. So let's see. In terms of our player pool, I didn't play Cantlay and I didn't play John Rahm up top, right? So they had a combined like 50% ownership. That let me play this entire range of players. So if you're going to ask me whether I regretted my decision or not, absolutely not. I would have much rather played, and let's say, let's just make it these 4, right? I would have much rather played the combination of Scheffler, Finau, Schauffele, and Sanjay than just playing Rahm and Cantlay all day. Like if it was just like a one-on-one decision between those 4 and those 2, I think if you chose those 2, you're a moron. Like literally straight up, like you're a fucking moron. Just compare their win equity and add them up, right? The 4 of them have significantly higher win equity than the 2 added together. So that's the process I went with. I just wanted to point that out. I'm not trying to be a dick, by the way, if you're playing chalk and it worked out, but like that's the idea. That's why we make these pivots, right? And sure, week to week, sometimes you're going to play chalk and it works out, but I don't know. Don't count on it working forever. That's all I'm going to say. There's a reason why in PGA DFS we talk about these pivots and they matter in chalk and fades up top, so on and so forth. Yeah, I'm not going to change my process. John Rahm, hats off to you. We'll see about playing him at Torrey. He's going to be chalk once again, but I think I have an ownership number in mind. I think if he's going to be 25% owned or less, I'll play John Rahm. If we end up getting just some ridiculous number like 28, 30% owned John Rahm, well, that's going to be the gray area. If it's between 25 to 30, we're going to have to figure out what the heck we're doing. That's the only range I really don't want him to be in is like 25 to 30%. If he's 30% plus owned, fade. Easy. I won't have an issue doing that if he's 30% plus owned, but Lord help me if he's going to be like 27.5% owned this week. That's just, when you're running the numbers, it's not going to be a good thing. CB says, underdog lines move so fast, must be an algo. Yeah, so it's when I post the thing on Patreon, right, and people start tailing it, if they get more than a certain amount of action in a minute, they're going to bump things or take them off. Every site should be doing that. I'm surprised that Prize Picks doesn't do that, to be honest with you. And yeah, you've only been here for 2 weekends. Okay, $3,000 in 2 weekends, so that's like $6-7 in a month. That's next level shit there, Hunter. Good shit. Dot Drunning says, will there be picks for next tourney? Of course, bro. They'll be for every single event this year. In fact, I don't think we have a week off until August. So yeah, there'll be picks for literally the next 8 months, boss. We'll have you covered. And you said you're definitely joining the Patreon. Well, we'd love to have you. Make sure to check it out, boss. Let's continue with this review. If you do want any just advice, you have any comments about the slate, if you have a lineup you want me to review and you didn't get into the community contest, now's the time to go ahead and put it down in chat. Just type out all 6 of your players. If you have any specific notes about the lineup that maybe you were trying to go with, I guess let me know there, and I'll get back to you guys. So we're going to go through the players here, and then at the end, any of the lineups that you throw down in chat, I will review. And If you have a lineup that you want me to review that wasn't even in the community contest, right? So like maybe it was a single entry you entered elsewhere you want to look at, you can let me know that too. Because, we're getting this stream started early, right? And just, it's a relatively new thing I'm doing. Not a lot of people are stopping by for it yet. We can afford to do so, right? I have the time to sit back, give you guys that specialized analysis. But going forward, you're going to have to be in the community contest. Like when we get this thing tuning out and people are really tuning into these reviews, it's going to be a little bit more competitive to get them reviewed on stream. So just take advantage of it now while you guys can. All right, so up top, we talked about a lot of the chalky pieces here. I guess let's go through this middle tier range, which this is really where you're going to win a GPP, right? And you can see I went for a lot of the lower owned pivots. Let's find Thomas Dietrich. I know I was putting him out before. I had him, pretty much projected right at his ownership, but I had this sinking feeling in the back of my stomach that he was going to be higher owned than 10%. So I didn't end up buying in. Next time, I just got to trust my algorithm, right? It knew that he was going to be right about 10% owned. And if I would have just trusted my own projections, which sometimes it's hard to do that, right? When you have that little gut feeling, even for the person making the projection. So like out there, just fully transparent, right? If you have a gut feeling about an ownership number, right, and you don't agree with what I have, go with the gut feeling. There's usually a reason that you have that gut feeling, but this time it actually screwed me. I should probably trust my own projections is what I'm going to say there. So 10% owned. I got to play Thomas Dietrich next time. I mean, look at that. He scored nearly 107 points. I played Smalley, who ended up outscoring Dietrich, but a lot of those top end lineups had both of them. They played both a Dietrich and a Smalley in that same sort of build, which you can see in that range. Obviously, Chris Kirk scored more than both of those. It still would have been nice to have that, particularly in like the single entries that I was playing in, that sort of thing. That's the kind of lineup that could still take down a GPP. So, we'll learn from that. We'll play Thomas Dietrich going forward, especially when the ownership projections are behind it. Will Gordon seems to be a favorite. A lot of people are playing Will Gordon these days. Our ownership projections in this range were just, they were about as good as it's going to get. So I felt pretty good about that this week. Nobody outside of 3% across the board other than a Will Gordon, who, like I said, seems to be a little bit of a fan favorite. People like playing him. So that's worth noting and accounting for going forward. Down in this range here, the one piece of chalk here was a Ben Taylor, who, by the way, guys, this was the worst play on the slate. If you played Ben Taylor last week or this week for the Amex, I guess I do want to point this out here. Don't do that. That was probably the worst GPP play that I've seen for the last 2-3 months. Ben Taylor was a small sample size issue, right? You take a look at the recent form for Ben Taylor, you'll get an idea for why I thought it was such an egregiously bad play. So where's good old Ben Taylor's, right? He was pretty cheap this week. And you want to know why he was cheap? This is essentially his entire sample size, right? The third place finish back there at the RSM, 59th, 57th place finish, just hardly making the cut. People saw this recent form over the last 8 events. They went to his shots gained metrics this week, where Ben Taylor, right, $7,000, he was gaining across the board, and went, oh, this guy must be an absolute god, right? You looked at the modeling, right, which just said small sample size issue. And everyone goes, oh, you got to play this guy, right? So not only did I think he was going to be chalk, he came in even chalkier, which I thought at 9%. I said this on the Wednesday live stream, that he was one of the worst plays that I had seen maybe ever when it comes to GPPs. Well, at 11.5%, I can tell you for a fact that is the worst GPP play I've ever seen. So if your tout played Ben Taylor this week, if you played Ben Taylor this week, I'm not trying to be a dick about it. Look yourself in the mirror and figure out why you thought that was a good idea. That's all I got to say. Because these other courses that he was playing, they were weak field events. He was hardly making the cut in most of them. He had these 2 solid finishes, but let's not anoint the guy as like the next coming of Christ because he has 2 top 5 finishes in weak field events, right? Like I think you gotta check yourself a little bit if you made that decision last week, because I tried warning you. I'll say that much at least. David, you have to hit me up on the Patreon to get in the Discord. So you have to ask it personally. No one else can send out invites. It's locked. So on the Patreon, yeah, I'll send you an invite. Exactly, Hunter. Exactly. Yeah, you're already on the Patreon, so send me a message. So yeah, I didn't know if you were on there or not already, David. If you are on there, you should be able to send me a direct message. If you just shoot me one, I'll send you over the link and get you set up. YON says, always check the numbers and when the events were played. Exactly. That's another huge part of it, YON, right? It was a recent sample size for Ben Taylor. I do have to say that, but it was a small one, right? So I pull my stats for the last 36 rounds. At least that's what I'm doing right now. That changes actually throughout the year. There's going to be times of the year where I'm only looking at the last 24. There's times where I'm looking at the last 50. So it's all very dependent on the event, the course, time of the year, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, you absolutely have to be looking at where the stats are coming from, because a lot of people out there click the last 50 rounds, like, and they think they're looking at recent form, especially like for like the Century Tournament of Champions or the Sony. There's people that were looking at recent form when they're pulling stats from literally last season, not even from the fall swing. Because if you were to use the last 24 rounds, that's more events than they played in the fall, right? So you're looking into last year, and that's how people are going, well, over the last 24 rounds, so on and so forth, right? He's gaining 0.6 strokes putting. He's coming into this with great form. What are you talking about? You're pulling the stats from last season, like 6 months ago, right? So like, I know you know that, why, and I know that's why you brought it up. Absolutely. And like Ben Taylor is a perfect example of that. That's why it was such an egregiously bad play this week. And honestly, I think that's something I'm going to try and leverage going forward, is trying to point out, and I'm going to do it on the Discord, is where I think I'm going to post a lot of this, because I kind of want to keep it under the low to make sure that people aren't also catching it. Like, I want this to be an advantage that I'm able to exploit, is finding those small sample size players and, kind of just running away with that, because we know people are going to overreact to it. Like, let's find an example. There's got to be more from this weak field event we can go off of. Baddeley's, by the way, Baddeley is not a small sample size. He's actually been good the last 6 months. So just the fact that his modeling's going off isn't the case there. Like, an Eric Cole is kind of an example of this. He's only got like 5-6 events on his shots gained record, and like, he's starting to pop. And after this last week, he's going to start to pop even more because of how he played there. Gunnar Weeb, perfect example right here. He's number 25 in Amex Fit. That's because a lot of his events are being pulled from Korn Ferry Tour stats, from a sporadic little sponsorship invite here and there. So if you're like just looking at the rankings here, like, oh, this guy's $6,200 and he's popping across the board. That's just one of the situations there where ownership's overreacting. You can see he actually didn't even come in highly owned though, right? So it's not like he came in higher owned than we were expecting. But those are the sort of players that you want to watch out for, that you don't want to be over the field on, just because you're looking at stats that are kind of lying to you. So I agree. Great call on that. Why I win. You grew up with Ben. He loves his beer, so I'll always fade him. Hey, if you grew up with him, he seems like a good dude. I have to say that he's like been around forever too. So like, people are like mentioning that he's like new on the block, so on and so forth. It's like, no, he's not. I'm sure you know this, Hunter, right? You've seen him out there for a while. People are like acting like he's new. Yeah, giving tips, absolutely. Yeah, on the down low, exactly. I'm not gonna like spread it to everybody, because like, I kind of want people to take that trap, right? Like, if they're gonna be out there thinking that this guy's like the holy grail and whatnot with their stats, like, let them take the bait, right? So that's the idea, absolutely. LSU champion, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying he's a bad player, yeah. And he went to LSU. That's sick. I didn't know that about him. That's good to know. But yeah, but watch this next week, Ben Taylor, right? If he goes to like no ownership, like if we get him at like 2% again, like 1%, like I played him 2 weeks ago when he finished in the top 5. Yeah, I'm playing him, right? Like I'll play this small sample size sort of guy when nobody wants to play him. But yeah, like last week when he's going to be like mega chalk, that's just, it's a gold mine to fade those sort of players. All right, so let's go through the bottom of the board. So we went through the middle tier. We talked about the Ben Taylor thing that I wanted to bring up. Let's go through the really cheap end of the board, because at these birdie fests, I just want to point something out. Look at this 6K range here, particularly this like bottom of the 6K range. 127 points for Robbie Shawn, 150 for Davis Thompson. We know he finished in second, right? Patton Kizzire scored 125. You had Eric Van Rooyen score 122. You had Schmid score 126. Garrick Higgo 121. 118 for a Higgs down there. And, you're starting to really get to the bottom here, but a Wu scored over 100. You had over 100 for an Endicott down there. And then you even had a Goya and Werbelow go out there and score 102.5 points. What that tells me is that we need to be taking more shots down here at these birdie fests. These 100 points down here at $6,000, I can almost guarantee you could have had a GPP winning lineup with one of them. You place one of them down there at the bottom of your lineup. You could have easily played Rahm, Schauffele, and Taylor Montgomery in a lineup. And then you could have even played 2 6K guys, right? You could have taken Werbelow, gone up to, maybe Davis Thompson there at $6,900, and then fit in another guy there towards the top of the 7K range as your last man in. Just there's a lot of utility in getting to the players down here, especially at a birdie fest. So just for next year at this event, I'm definitely going to implement that approach, but not even just for this event, just anytime we're going to get scoring conditions where we're going to see better than like 2-3 under par, I think we need to be considering the bottom of the board just maybe a little bit more than we have in the past. But that's pretty much all I've got here, guys. We've got a lot of content to come out with. We're going to have a course breakdown dropping, going through everything you need to know for this week, which there's 2 courses. Like I said, it should be playing even longer this year, even more lush with the rough than what we've seen. So I think we're in for a really fun Farmers Insurance Open. I think you're going to see scoring be a lot more difficult this year. And anytime that's the case at Torrey, you get a top-end guy winning. You have somebody that's in like the top 5, top 10 of the world winning, or at least one of the better ball strikers in the world. And last year we hit the Luke list outright here, right? So his first, win on tour went out there. We hit him at a massive number. So a lot of good vibes, and hopefully we can go out there and take something home. That'd be pretty damn sweet. So best of luck out there to everybody for this event. Again, I'll have all that content dropping. Make sure to smash that like button before you go out of here if you guys haven't already. Like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the content this week. And let's get this cash, fellas. Let's make it another profitable one for us.